Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, November 17th. It's actually a pretty decent list. There's a lot of stuff coming out, a little over 600 albums being released this Friday. I got 15 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that we put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, it's a big week for music. I think there's a lot of really great stuff coming out this week. A little over 600 albums. Actually, there's almost 650 albums coming out, which is kind of typical for this time of November. We're getting close to Record Store Day, Black Friday. Next week's list is really light as far as new releases go. So a lot of stuff comes out either the week before Record Store Day, Black Friday, or the week after. But so, like I said, there's some really good stuff coming out this week. I'm only going to talk about 15 albums on the show today, so something I don't talk about, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the link comments for everything I'm going to talk about on the show today, plus some other stuff that I'm looking forward to. You know, the list down in the comments, you know, typically ends up being around 30 or so albums for the week, so a lot of good stuff down there. I think the big release for this week is going to be this new release from Dolly Parton, Rockstar, which I was a little hesitant on it when I first heard about it, but it's a new album from her. It's her 49th studio album, which is a ton of music. Obviously, she's been recording music for forever, but this is her first rock album. It's a 4 LP set. It's running about $50 online. There's a bunch of different versions of this that's going to be available. There's a pink version, a black version, a red version, clear, purple. I know the purple one has alternate artwork. So, like I said, a bunch of different copies are going to be available out there. I actually prefer the alternate artwork a little bit more than the standard one. So I haven't pre-ordered this yet, but I'll definitely grab it this week because, like I said, when I first heard about this, obviously she recorded this because she was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't remember if it was like during the lead up to the ceremony or after the ceremony. She said, well, if I'm on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I guess I have to do a rock and roll album. And when I first heard about this, I was kind of hesitant. I'm like, okay, Dolly's a great, she's done a bunch of great country music over her career, but can she really pull off rock? And then I was streaming some of the songs a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually really impressed by a lot of the tracks that are on here. I thought this was all going to be new material. It is not. So you got, there's 21 covers on here and 9 new tracks across 4 LPs. So it's a lot of music she's got on there. A bunch of great people that she's brought on to help her with this album. You got Sting on here, Steve Perry, John Fogerty, Steven Tyler, Stevie Nicks, Joan Jett, Chris Stapleton, Miley Cyrus, and a bunch of others. I think that's just on the first disc. If you go through and actually look at all the people that are involved in this, I think she's doing a really good job with the music that she's putting together on this. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to that one. And then you've got Candlebox, The Long Goodbye, getting released this week. I know this was actually released on CD and digitally back in August. I think this is just now making its way to vinyl. But this is Candlebox's 8th and final studio album. It's going to run you about $36 online. I think there's also, I know there's a standard version of this. I think there might be an indie exclusive version of this also. I'm not 100% sure on that one though. I really love their first 3 albums. Their self-titled album and Happy Pills are definitely my 2 favorites. Lucy's a really good album also. I think there's some kind of skippable stuff on Lucy though. So like I said, those first 3 I really love. And then largely, I kind of really haven't paid attention to anything else that Candlebox has done during the rest of their career. I need to go back and stream this one before I make it out to the record store this week to see if it's something I'm really interested in. They did announce this album in kind of a farewell tour that I don't know if they're still on tour or if they finished up the farewell tour, but this is all together to kind of wrap up the history of the band. Another release this week that's going to have quite a few different color variants available out there for it is this new anniversary edition of Fallen, the debut album from Evanescence. Came out in 2003. This is an expanded and remastered edition of this album. It's all newly remastered. I'm not sure who did the remastering on it though. And as far as the expanded edition of it, so this includes some B-sides. It's got some rare live tracks. It's got some alternate versions on there. I'm looking forward to this release. It's only going to run you about $33 online. And like I said, there's several different versions of this. You got there's a Target exclusive, which is blue, that's the one I've got on pre-order because there's a slight variance, at least from I see online, slight variation in color on the cover that I like a little bit better on the Target version. Then there's a purple and black marble version, which I think is the indie exclusive, and then there's also a clear Walmart exclusive, and of course the standard black. So, like I said, several different versions of this going to be available. It was a huge album when it was released. You had two big tracks on here, My Immortal and Bring Me to Life, were the two big singles really kind of propelled the album. It hit number 3 on the Billboard charts here in the U.S., sold over 17 million copies worldwide. It was an absolutely huge album there for a few years. I've got the standard version of it, so because of some of the extra stuff that's on there, and plus it's only $33, it's not a bad deal for a 2LP release. I did decide to pre-order that one. And then another one I've got on pre-order is another, seems like there's a lot of anniversary stuff coming out this week. You got an anniversary edition of Spirit by Jewel being reissued or released. This was released back in 1998. It was her second studio album, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Also a 2LP release. It's also going to run you about $33 online. I went with a standard black version because there's two versions of it. There's standard black, and then there's a blue version, which I really like the color of the blue vinyl, but it's only available through her website. And it was $80 plus shipping through her website, which is absolutely ridiculous to me when the standard version is $33. As much as I like colored vinyl, if it's more than like a $10 difference, I'll go with black. Even if I do like the color, I can't spend more than double the price of the standard release for a colored record. I just can't do it. As much as I do love this album. But Down So Long and Hands were the two big tracks on here. This also hit number 3 on the Billboard charts in the U.S. I think it sold a little over 4 million copies here in the U.S. also. So it was also another big release when it came out. After Spirit, Jewel kind of changed her style of music a little bit. It was a little more poppier, I think a little more radio friendly. I wasn't a big fan of where her career went after that, but her first 2 albums are just incredible. The next one is one that I definitely have on pre-order had I not bought the box set earlier this year. But this is Ozzy Osbourne, Bark at the Moon. This thing has not been available in a very, very long time. First released back in 1983. It's Ozzy's 3rd studio album celebrating its 40th anniversary. This is there's a standard black version of it. And then there's an RSD Essentials version, which is on blue vinyl, which looks really cool. It's only going to run you about $21. This is the first time it's been available on vinyl since 1986. 86 was the last year it was pressed, obviously outside of the Ozzy box set, which is what I've got the album from. There was I think it was an 88 German pressing, but it was censored. So really the last uncensored version of this album was pressed in 1986, which is way too long for this great album. It does include a poster, so you got that a little bit extra in there. Like I said, great album. I think it was overshadowed by a couple of other, obviously, Ozzy's first 2 albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. I think kind of overshadowed Bark of the Moon. Bark of the Moon is an incredible album in its own right. And then the next album is another great anniversary album that's coming out this week. This is Verses by Pearl Jam, released back in 1993, celebrating its 30th anniversary. It's going to run you about $43 online. I will say there's 2 different versions of this. There's a 2LP 45 RPM version, which I do have on pre-order. I'm really excited for that one. That one's got the $43 one. And then there is a clear Target exclusive, which is a little bit cheaper. It's only 1 LP. It's at 33 RPM. It's going to run you, I think it's $23 online. I love this album. And I think it's one of the best albums of the 90s. I would say it's probably one of the best albums of the last 30 or 40 years also. And right from the launch of this album, I mean, it hit number 1 on the Billboards the very first week. I think it was number 1 on the Billboard charts and outsold number 2 through 10 combined for that opening week. I want to say it was the biggest opening week for a record or an album until I think it was like 96 or 97. I think it was like the Garth Brooks live album finally broke the record that Pearl Jam set with Verses when it was first released. Like I said, incredible album, one that I'm definitely looking forward to. I'm sure I'm sure the 45 RPM version is going to sound incredible. I still might grab the clear version just because how much I love this album. I think what makes this album so great. And yeah, there was a couple of big singles that came off, like Daughter, and Rearview Mirror was another big track that came off here. But I think what makes Versus such an incredible album is all the deeper cuts on this album that are even better than the singles. Another album that's getting an anniversary release this week. This is Rancid, Indestructible, released back in 2003. It was their 6th studio album. This is a 20th anniversary release. It's on red and black vinyl. It looks pretty cool, from the mock-ups I've seen online. It's going to run you about $32. So when Rancid released their self-titled album in 2000, it was very much more of a hardcore album compared to anything that Rancid had done before. And I think sales kind of suffered a little bit because of it. And so when they sat down and recorded Indestructible, it's kind of a return to more of a traditional Rancid sound. There's definitely some ska influence on there. Obviously, it's a pop punk influence on there. There's rock, there's alternative, there's some reggae stuff on there. Like I said, it sounds more like Life Won't Wait than anything else that the band had done up until that point. In my opinion, it's probably their best album of the 2000s, even though I think their new album that came out this year is probably a close second. It's also, I think, one of the more personal albums that Rancid has ever done. There's a lot of stuff about the journey of the band through the years and their ups and downs during their career. Like I said, a really good album. Definitely one that when it first came out, I was instantly hooked on it. I probably listened to it like nonstop for a good solid 6 months after it was released. And then I think there's another album that's kind of flying under the radar. It's really kind of flown under the radar for the last 25 years, being reissued this week. This is Anywhere But Here by the Ataris, first released back in 1997. It was their debut album. It's going to run you about $33 online. This is on yellow and black splatter vinyl. The Ataris have done some really cool stuff over their career. I think it was Atlantic, I think, is who they signed with after like their third or fourth album. And their sound really kind of changed after that. They got more polished. They kind of lost some of that raw edge that the band had. And it really, that rawness really kind of comes through on this debut album. They would go on to re-record this album in 2002. It kind of lacks a lot of the energy that this first album has. It's an album that, if you're unfamiliar with the Ataris and you love like late 90s, early 2000s punk rock, this is a great album to go back through and stream and check out. You got 3 Sinead O'Connor albums getting reissued this week. The first one is The Lion and the Cobra, first released back in 1987. It's her debut album. It's going to run you about $23 online. It's an incredible album. I think it might be one of the most overlooked debut albums of the later part of the 80s. Obviously, I remember there being some buzz around this album when it was first released, but I think kind of looking back on the album, people largely have forgotten about this one. I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got, which was her second album. That was one that had nothing to compare, her version of Nothing Compares to You on there. That was like the huge album that really kind of blew her up. But I actually think that The Lion and the Cobra is probably a better overall album than anything else she did in her career. It's just a great album. It's one that I highly recommend going back and checking out. As much as I bitch and complain about Pitchfork, and I think a lot of their reviews are way off, Pitchfork actually had this listed as one of the 50 best albums of the 80s. That's how high they think of this album. And I don't know if I would quite put it up that high, but it's definitely one we're checking out. And then you've also got I Am Not Your Girl getting reissued. This was released back in 1982. It was her third studio album. So it was always going to be hard to kind of follow up I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. Just like I said, Nothing Compares to You was a huge song when it was released. It really blew that album up. And I think she was kind of lost and didn't really know where to go in her career. And so she followed up that great album with a covers album. So she went through, picked a bunch of great jazz standards that she'd really been influenced by, and did what ended up being a really good covers album. But it was during the promotion of this album that she went on Saturday Night Live. I don't remember what song she was doing, but she ripped up a picture of the Pope, sparked a whole bunch of controversy. I think record sales really dropped off because what she did. This is also going to run you about $23 online. It's one that I probably wouldn't pay to own. But I think it's one that's at least worth going back and revisiting if you haven't listened to it in a long time. And then the third one coming out is Universal Mother, released in 1994. It was her fourth studio album because of all the backlash against Sinead O'Connor because of the Saturday Night Live stunt and some other stuff that she had said in the media. I think really I think it really hurt her music career. And when she went in the studio to record Universal Mother, when you listen to it, she kind of sounds like an artist kind of lost in her career, didn't really know where to go. And I think she used the recording sessions of this album as kind of like a therapy session. If you listen to it, there's some like really strong like folk influence on here, but there's this like underlying anger through a lot of the album that I think it makes it really interesting to go back through and listen to. Kind of similar to the other album. I don't know if I'd own it, but it's at least one that's worth, I think, checking out. There's another album that's coming out this week that actually was released digitally and on CD a couple months ago, and we're just now getting a vinyl version of this week. This is Laugh Track by The National. Was released back in September. It's their 10th studio album. It's a 2 LP release. There's a standard black version, and then there's a pink version. I think the pink version is a indie exclusive. It's going to run you about $35 online. This is the second album that The National has released in 2023. They released the first 2 pages of Frankenstein earlier this year, which I think is overall a better album than Laugh Track, even though there's tracks on both albums that I enjoy, even though I'm not the biggest fan of The National. I think had they, really what they should have done, it was all recorded during the same recording sessions. I think what they should have done is taken the best tracks off of the first album, the best tracks off of this album, combine them and just release one album. I think it would have been a better overall album than the 2 separately. But, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of The National. But I think if you're going to check out one, I would listen to the first 2 pages of Frankenstein before I would listen to Laugh Track, but that's just my opinion. And then you've also got the Best of Milli Vanilli getting released this week. This is an album. It's kind of interesting. If you look on the screen, it says 35th anniversary. This is a new release. It's just celebrating the 35th anniversary of the band. It was a little confusing when I first saw that pop up. It's going to run you about $35 online. There's 17 tracks over 2 LPs. It's all the best known tracks from Milli and Vanilli. They're a band that I think gets a lot of hate, but they actually released some decent music in the late 80s, early part of the 90s. And Rob and Fab were 2 individuals that wanted to break into the music industry. I think were largely taken advantage of by a label, even though they absolutely had a role to play in it all. And unfortunately, it ended up with one of them overdosing back, I think it was 1998 when he died. But, it's really an unfortunate story. This is a really great documentary out there if you want to check out, more information about Milli Vanilli. You also got Fear of a Punk Planet being reissued by the Vandals this week. This was released back in 1990. It was their 3rd studio album. It's on pink and black splatter vinyl. Looks pretty cool. It's going to run you about $32 online. I think it's a great early 90s punk album. There's a different fun vibe to the Vandals that I think a lot of early 90s and really kind of up until like the later part of the 90s was missing in a lot of punk music. This is just a great fun album to listen to. Some really odd features on this album. You got Kelsey Grammer on here, Dweezil and Moon Unit Zappa also appear on this album. Like I said, it's different. If you're unfamiliar with the Vandals, they're like I said, they're an interesting band to check out. And then the last one on the list is really interesting. Various artists release. This is Untitled, as told by Smart Punk and Friends. Smart Punk is a record label. I think they're also a store also down in Florida, I think is where they're based out of. And Untitled is this is a covers album of the Untitled Blink-182 album from 2003, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. I absolutely love it. So this is a track-by-track remake of the original album. I don't know any of the bands on this, so it's going to run you $27 online if you want Smart Punk's website. There's a couple of different variants available of it. It looks really cool, but this is one that I'm going to hold off. And as much as I love the original album, I'll hold off and at least see if I can listen to a copy of it before I decide to buy it. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. Like I said, I think it's a great week for music. There's at least 5 or 6 albums I already have on pre-order. I'm on the fence about a couple other ones. I think it's a great week leading us into Record Store Day Black Friday next week. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to picking up this week. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.